All right. Well, I can see it's up already. I'm a little surprised about that. This is working out pretty good. I kind of like this. Should have thought about it a long time ago. Using my laptop to kind of check on things here and also doing chat from there. It looks like it's going to work out pretty well even today. Good morning to those of you who are still having a morning. Hello to the rest of you. Today is the 13th of February, 2023. Monday morning, how often do I do videos or especially live streams on Monday? But with all that's happening suddenly here now, not really suddenly, but it's building, I thought I'd better, come on and talk about it and give us a chance to chat. Hello, everyone, as you come in. Thank you for letting me know I'm 5x5. And let's just get into it because I see this just now getting to the point where we really have to talk about it. And no, I'm not talking about the UFOs, supposedly, that everybody's talking about, possible aliens or any of those types of things. No, I'm not talking about that at all, although the government would probably like you to think that. Remember back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan said, uh, we have to consider what would happen and how we would handle it if the earth was attacked by aliens, and that we'd have to put down our differences and work together, right? Well, I'm not going to say there aren't aliens, and I'm not going to say that there aren't demons posing as aliens, but I really think that our real enemy, the real enemy to mankind, are the powers that be right here on our own planet, right here on our own Earth. Some people say, well, they're down in Antarctica, or, they're coming through interdimensionally. Whatever, it's really here and here, as I have often stated. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the real weird stuff today. I just want to bring out what's happening so that you all, and I'm sure most of you are already aware of all this, but for those who aren't, that they will understand what's happening, that these things are not accidents, they're not coincidences, that there are weapons of war that have been developed over the last couple of decades, maybe over the last 50 years actually, that are far beyond anything that we would understand as weapons, and they are used how I can better rephrase this. They are in extant use today, right now. We're seeing it. By the way, I've got this cup here, as you often know, I use. Sorry about the tongue tied. I was thinking about talking about this first. Uh, some people say, why don't you have your Second Amendment cup, Roy? Well, because that would probably be stating a little too much at this point in time. Not saying that that isn't necessary, but I think this is a little more apropos at the time. So let me take a sip of this, and it's coffee, by the way, with I have French vanilla flavoring in it this time. Yeah, it's pretty good actually. Mm. Keep my throat wet so that I don't choke too much, and hopefully I don't stumble over words like I just did a second ago. All right, what do I mean by there are someone waging a non-conventional warfare upon mankind? I'm not going to go into all the semantic differences or slight variations in definitions, military definitions, but there are different types of non-conventional warfare. What I mean by non-conventional is what we're seeing in Ukraine right now, for instance, is a conventional war. There are different degrees of that. There are high intensity, low intensity conflicts. Not even getting into that. We're going to talk about non-conventional warfare falling into uh, actually amongst three particular definitions: irregular warfare, asymmetrical warfare, and unconventional warfare. I'm not going to get into those. There are slight semantic differences and definitions in each one, depending upon how the military defines those things. And I don't think they're important for our conversation. I just mentioned them so that you'll know I am aware of them. I'm going to lump all of that into non-conventional warfare. Okay, all those different types of things. That would include guerrilla warfare, information warfare, propaganda, psychological operation. I mean, all sorts of things. But we're going to concentrate on two things that are happening right now. I don't mean events, I mean situations. One, of course, is obviously the propaganda campaign, the psychological warfare that's been going on for some time now, through the media primarily, but also through entertainment, our educational and our ecclesiastical institutions. Yes, I include those. That's part of the, for lack of a better term, the Marxist method. But at any rate, all of this is going on, of course, on that level. But now we're seeing, and we've been seeing for some time, actual events occurring that are attacking our infrastructure, killing us, uh, preventing us from thriving, a number of things. So I'm going to throw out a bunch of stuff here right now. Most of you will be aware of a lot of this going on. And a lot of you will say, well, that's hogwash, they can't do that. What I'm going to mention here, oh, yes, they can. All right. I want to also mention up front that I saw a tweet this morning. I'm not going to mention the person. And it's not so much that I don't want to confront them personally. It's just that it's just not worth the effort at this point. I see people that will deny that there are operatives in the military who will conduct assassinations. Probably the way that the tweet thread was framed initially caused this argument about that there's no one in the military who will do that to their fellow military members. And again, I'm not going to talk about the specific circumstance, but it was an assassination. And at the very least, it was a casualty. Okay. Again, I don't want to get into too much detail here because that's not the focus. But I'm worried how there are so many people that no matter what happens, they are going to protect their institution, be it FBI, be it CIA, or even be it police departments, or even be it the military. That they are so concerned. We saw this with Attorney General Bill Barr, for instance, that he had the information about what was going on with the election, etc., and situation like with Jeffrey Epstein, etc., etc., that he knew the truth, but he was so concerned about protecting the institution of the Department of Justice and the National Command Authority generally, that he wouldn't go down that road. Well, I saw that again today with some people that are prior military, or they might even be military at this point, saying that no one in the military in this particular type of unit would conduct such an assassination. And I'm not saying that everybody in the units are involved in this, but there are particular individuals that are CIA related. I know that for a fact, and that they're almost like the political officers of the Soviet Army, of the old Soviet Union. Political officers embedded in military units that keep track of things and that will also do the bidding up to and including assassinations. So I saw this thing going back and forth this morning, and this particular prior military, and he might still be in, said that that whole thing is ridiculous. It's false. It's a lie. And that no members of those units would conduct such a thing. And I'm not saying that all the members of the units did. Maybe that was the delineation that he was trying to make. But I know for a fact that there are those CIA embeds or assets in the military that will carry out the orders of the CIA, and of course the flag officers that are trying to cover their own ass. That's all I'm going to say about it. But this is a problem that we want to go to any length to protect the institutions that we have been involved in. It was hard for me to finally come to a realization that the United States military is part of enforcing the evil empire, and indeed is a tool of the evil empire, despite what the Navy says that it's a global force for good. Just as an example, it's a lie. And all we have to do is look around to see that it's the case. I get a lot of people upset at me for saying this, friends, contacts here. I meet people all over. I'm quite active on getting around and talking to people. And I don't bring up these subjects just out of the blue. But if the subject comes up, I speak my mind. And of course, I give information on my YouTube channel and my Twitter account, for instance. And it really turns people off. They don't want to hear this. They want to go stick their heads in the sand, or they've got some predisposed idea, some some uh, some bias of some sort, some other problem where they can't face the facts, or at least the evidence that's presented against them, and they'll turn away and walk, and they'll never hear from them again. Actually, I consider that a filter. The people that do that, I probably don't want to have anything to do with anyway. So presenting this information, and some of that even includes my personal history. I'll bring that out, of course, because if they don't want to listen, they don't want to have an intelligent discussion on these types of matters. It just means it's somebody I really don't want to have a close relationship with anyway. So, it's best to find that out up front rather than going down the road and finding out later that, there's a problem. So let me see what this is here. That's giving me seizures. That's the idea. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. I have another long sleeve sweatshirt that I wear. It's really nice. It's kind of blue and light blue, and it has lines in it. But when I wear that, the actual because of the flicker rate or whatever it is, the digital pixels and the way they operate on this system here, it'll look like my shirt's moving. At least this doesn't do that. Okay, so we're ahead of the game on that. All right, let's hit up some of the things that are going on right now that go along with the title of this video. I'm going to say up front that anybody thinks that the governments can't manipulate weather, even though they've admitted it, even though there are people out there that'll say that there are no weapon systems that can be used that don't leave behind any trace. I'm telling you that's not true. There are such things. Anybody that says that there are not weapons that can manipulate tectonic plate movement, you're wrong. There are, and they do it by interfering with the magnetic field of the Earth, and they can pinpoint it in certain areas. That's science that's been long established. What we get from the sun, for instance, has a major effect. What makes anybody think that some of the things, for example, I'll just say it, the high altitude system that's placed up for manipulating the atmosphere and other things, principally in the northern hemisphere, which is kind of interesting. I don't know of any down here. I wonder why. Or I should say over here, depending upon your point of view on that whole subject. Yes, they can. And of course, there can be other types of asymmetrical, I will use that one here, warfare upon us, and that we won't realize that it's being done to us. What am I talking about? In my own personal experience, of course, the psychological informational warfare has been going on for a long time. There are people who will deny Operation Mockingbird, or that it's something other than what it is. But just the bottom line is, yes, the intelligence community and the Department of Defense, which is actually part of that in a lot of ways, and all those institutions, they have been waging an information psychological warfare upon the American people for a long time. Of course, Obama took away the Smith-Mundt Act, which was basically prohibiting the government from using our resources to lie to us. That's been all gone now since Obama's presidency, but they really didn't abide by it before anyway. It's kind of like the Minsk agreements in Ukraine. Oh, we'll agree to that, but we're not going to abide by it. In other words, we'll sign the paperwork, but we're not going to abide by it. We're fooling the Russians. We're pulling the wool over their eyes. And the rest of the world, too. There was never, ever any intent to abide by the Minsk Accords, which, if you don't know what they are, look them up. They were basically, and NATO's made these promises since the 90s, that they wouldn't encroach any further into Soviet, or I should say the Russian sphere, wouldn't bring NATO any closer, not bring up military units, not bring in military weapons. And then the Minsk Accord said that Ukraine would remain neutral, and that they wouldn't be involved in entering NATO. Well, of course, we kept arming them and all that, and then the Russia saw that they were basically an existential threat And they had to act to defend not only the people of the Donbass, but Russia itself. And of course, then the U.S., who set all this up, in Britain and NATO, then say, oh, look, Russia's the big bully here, ignoring the history of the whole thing. So I understand that this informational psychological warfare, as a particular, has been going on for a long time, and it continues. But now we're into another stage. It's almost kinetic, but in the non-conventional way, where I'm lumping in irregular, asymmetric, and unconventional warfare altogether. Okay, I'm throwing all those into this non-conventional idea, so that you don't know that you're under attack. What's the best way to kill the enemy? Kill them when they don't even know they're being attacked. And that's exactly what's happening now. So in 2014, it actually started before that, but it kind of culminated there with the situation at Bundy Ranch, where there's been an attack on the ability to raise food. It's been attacked by the Environmental Protection Agency, by the Department of Agriculture, by all these silly things coming down from the UN. And then, as an example, Bundy Ranch happened, where the Bureau of Land Management, along with the DOJ and other federal organizations, agencies, basically had come down on the cattle ranchers in southern Utah and shut them all down except for one, and that was Bundy Ranch. And if you don't know about the Bundy Ranch situation, I was there. I saw this happen. If you go to my playlists on my YouTube channel here, I mention this quite often. I was there reporting on what was happening. And you can go to the playlist and Bundy Ranch, and I don't know how many there are. I think there are like 20 videos there, something like that, and you can kind of find out what was going on. At any rate, the bottom line was that was an attack on our ability to feed ourselves. It wasn't about taxes like the federal government tried to make it out to be. There were issues there, but that wasn't why they did it, and it certainly as hell wasn't because of the endangered desert tortoise that they had been euthanizing anyway. The Bureau of Land Management, it was all made up stuff to try to justify to mindless Americans who, my country, right or wrong, we can't do any wrong. They could justify doing these, the BLM and the federal government could justify doing these horrible attacks on our food supply and on our farmers and ranchers who provide our food. I saw that and I said, this is getting out of control. We understand about Bill Gates, Billy Goats. Shouldn't use his name here. Buying up farmland, talking about putting things in our food that will force us to take treatments that we don't want to choose, right? All of that's going on. It's, again, control of food supply. We see situations like, what's the name of it? Alimentarius, Codex Alimentarius. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's about influencing our food supply. It's about the situation with genetically modified foods that much of Europe, especially Russia, won't accept, but Americans gulp this stuff down with glee. And it's hurting us. As I say, it's an attack at our most basic genetic level. Then it moved, of course, to the whole OWS movement, right? Let's hurry this thing along, changing the human genome, the human physical biological structure. Let's attack them at that level. And if you don't know what's going on there, you really got your eyes closed. I'm not going to cover it much here because that's one of the things that the AI looks for, and we'll shut you down. I have more things here I want to get to that are going on right now, which most of you are probably discussing in the chat now, but I don't watch that when I'm talking. I can chew gum and walk at the same time, but I can't think and deliver a message and read chat at the same time. Sorry, I can't do that. I haven't developed my intelligence level to that degree yet. So, beyond all that, what's happening? Okay, attacks on our food supply are continuing. Over the last couple of years, you should have been watching food processing centers, and most lately, a big chicken farm back, I think it was in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure exactly where it was, are all mysteriously being subject to arson or burning down for unknown reasons. And the DOJ and the law enforcement agencies are silent about what's going on. But all these things are happening. Now, it could be arson. It could be that because of the way that these agricultural processing companies are losing money, right? that arson's a good way to collect on the insurance. I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but that doesn't change the inevitable same outcome, which is it's an attack on the food supply, maybe a backdoor way, okay? Forcing them to take the insurance rather than producing food for you to eat. They might not even know that they're being forced to conduct that arson. I'm not accusing them, any of them, of doing that, but regardless of how it's happening, our food supply is under attack. We have our southern border open. Saboteurs of whatever origin, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Russian even, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is we let them come across. You see what Biden's doing now. He's removing the surveillance balloons over the southern border, which is one of the most effective means. And I called for this back when I did my Borders, Mexican Drug War or Insurgency video, my whole documentary there, which you can see in the playlist under my films and documentaries, back in 2011 with my suggestion that we need to do actual on-the-ground defense of our border, and that would include using the military, and observation balloons is really good. You can't have a barrier without it being observed. Merely putting up a wall does nobody any good on either side, and especially if it's not being surveyed, observed, surveilled, or observed. A barrier has to be observed to be effective. Otherwise, it's not. It's just another mountain to climb, and that's exactly or tunneled under. That's the problem with surveillance balloons. Taking those away, Biden's not concerned about protecting the border. He's not concerned about saboteurs and other criminals and terrorists, etc., coming across our border. He's opened us up for attack, and I think most of you understand that. All right. So who's taking down these food processing centers? Well, you know what? The government is at least, how would I say, turning away, looking away while it happens, because they do want you to be totally subject to them. That's how you subjugate a society, a population. You make them totally dependent upon you. You got to get your food from us. You got to get your money from us. You can't protect yourselves. The police will do that for you, even though they're never there when you need the protection, right? You can't talk anymore because it's hate speech. You see how they're shutting down all of this to keep you from having access to information and being able to take active measures to protect yourself. Even to the point where the government says that standing up against them and calling them out, they say it's domestic extremism or terrorism, and that you're warring upon the government when they're warring upon you. You don't have a right to self-defense against the government that's doing that to you? Of course you do. But they say that you can't even address it. Well, so now we're losing our food supply. We see what they're doing with, we're going to have solar energy. That's how we're going to power everything. Yet there's the program, which John Brennan already admits it exists. Some people call it chemtrailing, but actually it's stratospheric aerosol injection. And it's been going on for decades, but really quite a bit the last decade. And if they're going to block the sun, how are you going to get solar energy to make electricity? But what's worse is it's cutting off, again, the food supply. Plants need sunlight and carbon dioxide to formulate, to put out carbon molecules for you to eat and oxygen molecules for you to breathe. So it's an attack at that level. Who's doing this? Are they extraterrestrials? Are they, interdimensional creatures that CERN's bringing in? I think we're looking beyond the mark there. All we got to do is look right here, and right here. That's as far as you need to go. So, the attack on the food supply is happening. Another way to attack that is by transportation, right? Make it more difficult and more expensive to transport goods and services. They've cut off your oil supply, and yet they want to go buy it from Venezuela. Does that make any sense? You cut off your own oil supply, by shutting down drilling and all of that, pumping the oil and all that, because you say that it's bad for the environment and you want to switch to green, but then you go and you ask a major oil supplier to supply you with that oil that you've now cut off yourself. None of this makes any sense. War sometimes doesn't make any sense unless you look underneath what's happening in front of you, and also, like the old thing, who benefits. And when you start doing that, you realize they're out to kill you, all of you. So what's the next thing that I want to discuss? Well, again, the balloon thing, okay, and all this Humpty Dump and nonsense about shooting down unidentified flying objects and creating this idea in the head of the people, which has really taken off. I'm not saying there aren't real extraterrestrials in a sense. I look at it differently than most people, and I frankly think that what those extraterrestrials are, in my opinion, you don't have to go along with this, that the governments are really worried about is the King of Kings coming back and taking their power from them. And of course they consider that an invasion and an attack on their liberties, their rights. But they're setting us up to reject the real one, okay? The false one's already here. Okay, so what's the next thing? Well, Turkey came out not too long ago. The ambassador told the United States, the Turkish government told, and I mentioned this the other night, told the American ambassador to stop interfering in their internal affairs in Turkey. And this particularly had applicability to what they were doing with Russia, with allowing gas through their territory to Europe. Also, other things involved with Syria, just a whole bunch of things that the U.S. is trying to manipulate Turkey into doing. Well, are we going to just, send a conventional force in there? And no. Are we going to do regime change? They're talking about it. Right? They're talking about regime change. John Bolton is in Turkey. And we already have Samantha Powers in Hungary talking about, oh, we're going to help them get more free here. No, they're going to try to do a regime change there. And you, President Orban of Hungary, if you're smart, you will throw Samantha Powers and all those NGOs that she's representing out of your country post haste. But Turkey did all this business, all right? They're dealing with Russia. They're talking about getting off the petrodollar, amongst other things. All kinds of things are happening here. But we can't send in a conventional force. That's too obvious. We're going to try to do regime change, but that we got to kind of push that along a little bit. What's the next thing we do? We use irregular, let me rephrase that, non-conventional warfare means. Something they may not even recognize as an attack. What happens? It may have been a nuclear weapon that destroyed 30,000 plus lives in Turkey in one day. Eliminated much of the infrastructure, destroyed it, threw people out of their homes. The wounded. This is catastrophic. It may as well have been an assault like the United States did on Hiroshima or Nagasaki in World War II. That's how much damage was done here. Now people will say, oh, Roy, that's going too far. Earthquakes happen all the time. The sun, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, does things to our magnetic field, our shields and our magnetic field, that can cause earthquakes. That's very well known. Go look at Dutch Sense on YouTube. Go look at BP Earthwatch, just as a couple of examples. They followed these things for years. It's well-known scientific fact. Oh, but the powers that be say the sun doesn't have anything to do with our climate. No, it's just human activity that causes our climate to change. Or it's not the sun that causes earthquakes and all these other things. No, it's something else, whatever. But we can't ignore the fact that despite the natural occurrences, we have controlled the weather. For instance, the Ho Chi Minh Trail during the Vietnam War, they caused it to rain so much that the U.S. did that the Vietnamese, or the Viet Minh, Viet Cong, and the North Vietnamese army could not use the Ho Chi Minh trails at times because it was too muddy to traverse. And yet, oh no, we can't do that. Although those things you see in the sky, although they're just regular, vapor trails. Oh no, they're not. And John Brennan admitted that, and we now see billy goats and others. We've seen the patents for these things as well. And Billy Goats is talking about doing that exact same thing to block the sun, even though he wants you to use electricity from solar power, which won't work either if they do that. Isn't this amazing? They're either really that stupid, or they just think you are. So, Turkey, Erdogan, is now facing regime change, and they're attacking his people because he's not going to be able to handle this. And of course, the same thing's happening in Syria, and we have sanctions against Syria, so we're not even helping those poor people at all. Such a great Christian nation here. We're so Christ-like. It's a lie. And it may have been a lie from the day the Constitution was founded. There were good things in the Constitution, but I recognize its weaknesses, as Legal Man on Twitter has explained. And we see it because if it wasn't weak, we wouldn't be in the situation we are now where it's totally disregarded. So what's the next thing? Well, I'm going to say it again. I am near 100% certain that earthquake in Turkey was caused by weapons that you're not even aware of. Same sort of thing happened in Romania. What's happening in Romania? Well, they've got a problem with their prime minister there, okay? And the people are saying, we don't want any part of this thing going on in Ukraine. We don't like American troops here anymore. We're now starting to see that these American posts and bases that are all over the world aren't there to just merely project American power to protect the country where they are. Oh no, it's starting to look like they're actually occupational forces to make sure that we do as we're told. And that's what this official in Hungary said a couple of days ago as well. It wasn't just the Turkish official, it was a Hungarian official that said the same thing, leave us alone. And so now we see this regime change with Samantha Powers there. And I would rather suspect that in Hungary there's probably going to be some type of a natural disaster that wasn't natural at all, but caused by interfering with the magnetic field of the earth in that region. So again, in Romania, same thing. They just had an earthquake there. And then, to top it all off, I had never seen the movie, but apparently there was a movie about a derailment of a train carrying toxic materials that overturns somewhere in Ohio and then causes this big toxic cloud that's killing people and animals and just being a big mess. I never saw the movie. I can't attest to the fact that it really exists. I just heard about it. But lo and behold, we have a major train derailment in Ohio. And the government exacerbates it by allowing it to burn and send toxic fumes into the air that is killing animals and eventually human beings, if not already, 100 miles from the accident, so-called accident site. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know you're being attacked, you don't even think about defending yourself. What's that old saying? The greatest trick the devil pulled was convincing people he doesn't exist. Take that to a next logical step, that if the government hates you, and everything that we've been seeing, at least in the Western so-called democracies, and with that I would include Australia, New Zealand, and some other places, Brazil as it is right now, because of what's happening there. It's happening elsewhere, not just the Western democracies or those associated with it. But when you see what's happening, it's real obvious that there is a war upon mankind. And they're doing this by attacking the people of their own countries, fomenting a war with Russia to mask it so that they can blame the Ruskies and try to rally you into sending your sons and daughters to fight another one of these bankster wars, eliminate the next generation by killing most of them off, which is exactly what's happening in Ukraine right now. Grabbing these young men, and I think young women probably too, off the streets against their will, which is why conscription is so evil. Because not serving in a military, choosing not to serve in the military is a vote that you are not for what they're doing. But they want to take that right of you to make that decision contrary to what your government wants away from you. And they're doing it in Ukraine right now. I think we're going to see a lot more of all this type of activity. It's not going to get any better. It's going to keep going on. And unfortunately, we have very few members of our Congress in the United States, whether representatives or senators, that are willing to call this out. And if they are, they're immediately ignored or trashed by the mainstream media and by government CIA assets. So that's where we are. And you know, I was talking this morning. There are some subjects on. I might as well mention it here. It's I put her. I think I put her tweet. A friend, someone that I don't know, but someone who likes to send me information, sent me some information this morning on a tweet from a Samira, I believe is her name. Apparently, she was in the Miss America contest or Miss Universe contest some years ago. I don't know all the details. No, I'm not out to get her as a wife. That's not why I did this. But I'll give you the story because it ties into everything that's happening. Okay? You know, they're trying to change men and women's relationships. I've talked about that for a long time. They're trying to stop that, not just to stop population growth, but also to ruin that relationship, which is very much the source of our inspiration and our ability to move forward, despite all the naysayers who try to say that that's not the case. Oh, yes, it is. But at any rate, so she put up a thing, and I'm just going to mention it here because it's apropos to what's happening to mankind. She put up a post, I guess within the last day or so, that says that, you know, a good way to solve what's happening in the world today is to reinstitute polygamy. Oh, I can hear the rock throwing and the cries and the Christian prudes, and all these people have no understanding but what they've learned from the pulpit or read in a Bible that's been manipulated by men for thousands of years. They won't look at the real situation. Okay, that's fine. But the point is, this lady brings this up. I didn't. She did. And it was sent to me. And I responded to her, and I said, thanks for discussing this. Here's who I am. I can talk about this authoritatively if you want to discuss this any further. You can see this on my Twitter line if you want to go on my Twitter line. And we were talking back and forth, and then some other subjects came up in context to that. And let me set this up for you, okay? They're destroying mankind. They want to reduce the population, whether by war or by famine, which is still a form of war. All the things that we see happening. In the 70 Years' War, the male population was so decimated that the population of Europe was going to drop. It was going to be dang near as bad as the bubonic plague, if not worse, in the long run. So it's not talked about much in history, but some of the European countries reinstituted polygamy. In other words, they may not promulgate it, they may not push it, but they looked the other way if it happened. And that was how the population of Europe was brought back. Polyandry doesn't work. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to discuss it. But polyandry doesn't work. Societies that do that die out because the birth rate drops to zero. I'm just going to say that, leave it alone. I'm not going to go any further. Polygyny, however, very productive, very successful when it's allowed to be used as that example in Europe showed. So this lady Samira was talking about this, and she says we really need to do that. And I'm telling you that this is one of the ways that the wheat is separated from the tares, this particular subject, despite all the Christian nonsense and prudish conduct, and even other religions for that matter. This is going to be a dividing line that'll decide what side you're on. I'm telling you, that's coming. I've read Isaiah to you, where he talks about, in the war, your men will be destroyed. It's in chapter 3 and 4 of Isaiah. And he says, this war will take away your men. There will be none left. What are we seeing now? They're either soy boys now, or they don't know what gender they are, sex they are. They don't want to marry women because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them by the state that's the surrogate husband for these women. And the women have been told, oh, you deserve a man who makes 6 digits in money, six-figure digit money, is tall, dark, and handsome. I think that fits me pretty well. It doesn't work, but anyway, little joke there. So they have unreasonable expectations. Love is no longer an issue. Not even just mere respect, but what can I get out of it? Which is kind of legitimate. Marriage is kind of a political contract between a male and a female. I'll go along with that. But at what cost has it been abrogated to this fairy tale that the entertainment industry and the institutions have been pushing forever? A lot of single women out there right now are going, man, where did I go wrong? Feminism. You believe that? And I'll tell you a little story about my wife, Carol. My wife was a feminist. Yeah, she was. Carol, when she was younger, in her 20s and early 30s, she was a feminist, Democrat. I think I've told you she's Democrat before, but the good type. But yeah, she was a feminist. And she really thought that was the way to go. Didn't like men very much, thought they were problematic, and didn't understand really the other issues. Fortunately, she had an excellent family. Her mother and father were great examples. And at some point in time, as she looked back on her life, she realized that she took the wrong course. And that's when she came looking for me. She was my 4th wife in that relationship. Okay, looks like I got, oh, my battery's going dead. Now, it's a good thing I watch this because I don't want us to lose this. So let me plug this in so we can keep going. Pardon my hand here as I save our power supply. Okay. I put up on Twitter yesterday a third of my family. I'm not much into the NFL. The Super Bowl means nothing to me, but the family wanted to get together and have a party and have the game up while it was going on. I said, okay. No, I didn't like the halftime show. I never do. I didn't even really watch it, just got glimpses of it. But I got them all together. Actually, there were a few people that had been there that slipped out. I didn't know they had left. We could have added 2 or 3 more to that picture, but that was basically a third of my family. A third. Direct family. Not extended family. A third of my direct family. A third of it. None of my wives were there. 2 of them died. Carol, of course, Denise did. And 2 of the others had left because of different circumstances. And none of my other contract relationships were there either. So at any rate, I put up that picture, a third of my family, and it's on Twitter, and it's on, I think I put it up on the community posts above as well. Why did I do that? Well, because that's what's important these days. I don't give a damn what these people say. I don't give a damn what the prudish Christians say. Wisdom is justified over children. I put that on Twitter. And then I even included a quote from Samuel where it says that King Saul, died in battle, and then God says that he puts David in charge, and that. Now, I know some of you will not accept this. You'll say that it's nonsense or it's allegory or whatever. That's okay. The point is, it's there, and it says, because God didn't want this. No, he didn't. Well, he tells King David after he goes and does this horrible thing with Uriah and Bathsheba, where he steals Uriah's wife and has Uriah killed on the front line of the battle. God says, if you had wanted more wives, I would have given you more. All you had to do is ask. You didn't have to take Uriah's wife. And Uriah, if David had asked him, would probably have given him Bathsheba, just given her to him. But it was his subterfuge, not the act of the multiple wives that he had, but his subterfuge, his sin in causing a murder of his best friend at the time, that God chastised him for. And it's not condemned. That lifestyle is not condemned nor promulgated, I'll agree. Neither condemned nor promulgated in the New Testament. The New Testament is not Napoleonic law. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up Napoleonic law. It is not that. So, the next step in Isaiah. What does he say? I've read it many times. And in that day, after this big war has happened and the men are decimated and a third of the earth is destroyed, and in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man and shall say, we shall eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. And in that day shall the branch of the Lord be glorious. I didn't say it. Isaiah said it, and Jesus quoted Isaiah. At least it's been attributed to quoting Isaiah many times. This is a dividing line, ladies and gentlemen. And how is it related to all this unconventional warfare that I'm talking about, this non-conventional warfare? Because killing off mankind is part of their plan. And the way to counter it, if it goes too far, and I'd say we're already there. Yeah, I know about, the OWS and that, there's genetic damage. And so there are people now putting up dating sites and stuff that have to do with people that haven't engaged in that, whatever. The point is, that's the only way out of it, unless you want to see mankind totally destroyed. That's how God's going to do it. He's not going to do it by some miraculous thing that you can't see with your eyes or some return out of the sky. He doesn't work that way. He's going to work with nations. And like I said, this is the Assyria today. It might even be something more than that. The bottom line of all this is they're waging war against you, and you don't even recognize it because it's not bombs dropping, although it is in Ukraine, right? Terrorists aren't even that active now, although they're going to start up again because they've got to keep that going. So it'll get to the point where you'll realize you're being attacked. But in the meantime, they're taking you out slowly, incrementally. They're complaining about Russia. There are people who are saying, Russia's so slow in Ukraine. They're just doing this so slow. They're incrementally doing it to protect their own forces. And that's exactly what the bad guys are doing to the rest of us. They're taking us out incrementally, putting us in the pot and turning up the temperature just a little bit. They don't want us jumping out. Ladies and gentlemen, you better start understanding what this male and female relationship is, because it is the crux. It is the root that is going to save you. Not the bullshit coming out of D.C. or even the religious and social structure institutions. And I include the churches on that by and large, who have totally misunderstood the purpose of what this is all about. I'm not saying that reproduction is the only reason for the male-female relationship. I've talked about that. It isn't the only reason. The first reason was companionship. But in that companionship, that fruit is the inevitable result. Not saying you have to go that way, but normally it's going to happen that way. And it's a source of joy. How do I know? Look at the picture that I put up of a third of my family, and you'll know. Oh, I have some wayward children that don't respect me at all, that have, because of, frankly, their mother's influence, that they decided that, I wasn't worth the effort. But that's only 2 kids out of 11. Am I here pushing this like the LGBTQ blah, 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 push theirs and force it down your throat? No. Wisdom is justified of her children. This is one of the ways out that's going to divide the wheat and the tares. And it was God that gave David, said he would give David more if what he had was not enough. There'll be more types of attacks that have to do with the climate, supposedly. More attacks that will happen weather-wise. More attacks that will happen like we saw in Turkey, Romania. More of that's coming because those are weapons you can't see it when you get bombed, missiled, artilleried. There are systems where you can backtrack that information and find out what the source is. With this, it's going to be very, very difficult, especially when the American people and the media and their governmental institutions don't talk about it. But who has ever raised? I see that MTG is raising it a little bit now. Representative Green is raising it a little bit now about this attack on the food supply and on this other situation. She's kind of raising it. I don't really know of too many others. Is it because they're stupid? Is it because they're hoodwinked too? Or is it because they're complicit? That's probably a combination. Not all of them are complicit, but I'm certain that most of them know what the real story is. Why aren't they saying anything? Because they're afraid of the IC. They're afraid they might be JFK'd. It's up to us, ladies and gentlemen. We can't wait for them. We've got to go about doing the things right now. If they're trying to suppress and even destroy population growth, we need to respond by increasing having children, not decreasing. Protecting them. People say, well, I don't want to raise kids in this world the way it is. Well, then it'll never change, ladies and gentlemen. And your seed will not. If you teach your children your principles and they take that out in the world, that's a hope for salvation. That's another reason why I say Jesus was married. He didn't stay here celibate. He sent his seed, his children, and I'm an example of that, out into the world to be a hedge of protection. He would not have abrogated that joy and responsibility because he understood, because it was set by God in the first place, that the seed of the righteous is what God works with, and he's not going to allow it to go to hell. So everything I've talked about today, you need to consider. You need to look at what I've said about Isaiah 4:1. You need to consider that we really need to change what we've been taught and trained to think, which is absolutely contrary to our survival. Think outside the box. Don't accept the BS manure that comes out of the mouths of people over here. Prep, pray, and stay out of the way. Keep your situational awareness on high. But you're going to have to start, we are going to have to start looking at things in an entirely different light. That's all I got for you. I'll take some of the probably scathing comments that are going to be here, but that's all right. What the heck, huh? Okay. Yes, they're coming for you. Absolutely they are. And this last thing with the Ohio train derailment, derailment, I'll say it right in a minute, is obvious. I understand, I don't know this for a fact, but I've read it. MTG even brought it up. They're arresting media people that are trying to cover the story. Now, is that to keep them safe because they don't want them getting close to the toxic fumes? Or is it to keep a lid on how bad this is and what it's actually going to do to you? I would suggest the latter. Okay. Stacy, yeah, I know they can use drones. They can use rods of God. They can use plasma weapons, Stacy. Do you even know they have such things? Do you know they have DEWs? Do you know they have electromagnetic weapons? Do you understand that? One drone from above can take me out. Yeah, I think Obama said something about that. He made a joke about it, and you won't even see it coming. Oh, he's so brave. He's killed so many people. He's so brave. It's easy to destroy. It's harder to cultivate life. Just ask a farmer what's easier, plowing a field under or making it grow. Okay. Let's see. Well, yeah, and of course, I've talked so long, I've missed a lot of information at the front. And Debbie Donovan, I know you're very much against it. We've talked about that. It's a subject matter. Okay. Uh, I'm just telling you personally right now, if you want to talk about it deeper, we can do that. No, I don't like any form of a relationship that becomes abusive. It happens in monogamy, it happens in uh, dating, and it can happen in any social structure. But historically, polygamy has been very successful. I just gave you one instance, 70 Years' War. Israel became a huge nation because of it. So I'm not going to argue with you, Debbie. I consider us friends, but okay, I'm not going down the same road that some other people are, and you know who I'm talking about, that try to castigate the entire system. If we're going to do that, let's just destroy the man-woman relationship altogether, okay, Debbie? If anything hasn't worked, it's if you really want to know, I came out against a guy, I'm not going to even mention his name here, a few weeks back, a few months back, who said the male-female body forms are the enemy. You want to just go there, Debbie? Yeah, I'm telling you down here because I'm not going to put up with this bullshit anymore, even from my friends, because I know what the truth is. And I consider you a friend. Okay, I don't expect you to agree with me, but don't castigate a system unless, I ran into that the other day, as a matter of fact. Let me see if I can remember how this went. Adam Schiff, our illustrious Ophidian, if you don't know what that is, look it up. Adam Schiff came out and said, it's wrong that this particular county, I'm not going to say which one it is, I think it's a California county, took down the LGBTQ flags because, that's just isolating a part of our community and causing a problem. Well, Adam Schiff, as I mentioned to him, you're very inconsistent. Consistency cries for it, but you can't even make it happen. Because if you're going to put up a flag for every little minority group and every little whiny group that wants representation up, you won't have enough flagpoles to fly them all, you stupid idiot. Am I angry at him? Yeah, because he's an evil person. He's an Ophidian in the flesh. That was the entire purpose of the United States of America. I'm not saying to embrace immorality. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about how they try to divide you. The flag was, and I know there are problems, okay, with the Statue of Liberty, with the flag, with the whole story of the founding of America. I know that. I'm an historian. But the basic principles I adhere to, and that is that you unite those people under that one flag. You don't have 10,000 flags flying around. I'm not saying it's wrong to put up, your Irish flag if you want or whatever, but don't demand it fly from a government building, Adam Schiff. You're an ass. You're a divisive Ophidian. No, Stacy, then I'm going to address you one last time. More kids are the way God does this. He works in his natural order, okay? And that is the answer. Sorry, it just is. I'm not going to address you again, okay? That's it. I'm done. Well, that's interesting. I don't know where you got that. I just lost it. Where'd it go? Adam Platts. Yesa had 10 children with Mary Magdalene. Where did you get the number 10? I'm not saying you're wrong, because there was something there. I just didn't know. I don't know where you got that number. I find that interesting. I know he had at least two. I know he had at least two, and that was only by Mary Magdalene. I'm telling you a little other side of the story here, okay? But anyway, thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gloria. Big hugs. I appreciate it. I need them. Well, I'll tell you what. You stand out here on this precipice like I do, this chasm. I could stand up for axe murderers. I could be an axe murderer. I could stand up for real abusers, criminals. I could stand up for just about damn anything and be accepted. The one thing, other than my criticism of the government at this point, which is even less, the one thing that causes people to attack me more than anything else is my understanding of man-woman relationship, and especially my past. No, I'm not doing it now. It would literally take an act of God to push me down that road again. A single lady, yeah. One-on-one, yeah. I'm for that. But unless God forced me down that road, now He wouldn't force me, but make it, an act of God to cause it. No thanks. Would I be willing to go through persecution and all that again? Yes, that's not the issue. I think it's time for me to go to a cabin in the woods or a beach house somewhere and just sit there and enjoy the companionship of a nice woman. Oh, I've had some come around. I'm not bragging now. I've shown you pictures, and I can show you a lot more. I'm not out there fishing, so to speak. In other words, when I go out and introduce myself to a lady, and I did this in the mall the other day, I'm not expecting a hookup or a one-night stand. I'm testing them. I'm finding out if there's a connection there that I don't have to force. If I have to force the connection, it's not going to be right. I don't even try. Give them my card, introduce myself, tell them they can go look me up or whatever. Then the responsibility for me trying to do that is out. Okay, I'm done. I'm not out there to get that hookup, that one night stand or whatever. I'm out there to see if there's a connection up front. And if there isn't, good. And I can move on. It's a filter for me. Do I use meth? I don't use any drug. Who was this? What idiot said this? Region 9, till I die. Meth? No. I don't use any drugs. But the closest thing I have is I have scotch once in a while. I did have some other stuff the other night. It was a type of whiskey. But no, that's about the only thing I do. That is the only thing I do. Whiskey. I used to drink beer, but it caused me to bloat up too much. Wine's too sugary. I'll have a little bit sometime of that. But my mainstay, and I don't get knocked down, drunk, or incoherent or anything. I get sleepy is what happens. Scotch or a good bourbon. Entertaining spirits. Stacy, boy, you know what I said I wouldn't address you again. You know what they've done to you? They've cut off your source of inspiration and revelation. Another dividing line. Boy, you swallowed that hook, line, and sinker, didn't you? Last time I addressed you, Stacy. I said last time, but I definitely. Southern Comfort, I don't care for Southern Comfort. Southern Comfort is it's too sweet for me. I saw Yasa, but I don't remember. I couldn't see who did it there. Sorry. Have you watched? No, okay, me see here. No, Debbie, it's not. You can be a slave in monogamy. Okay, it's the last time I'm going to talk to you about it. I see women in monogamy that are slaves. I see men in monogamy that are slaves. No, it's not the same thing. Okay, and I'm not going to talk to you about it anymore, Debbie. It's been the one thing I was willing to talk about, the abuse in that society, because it exists just like it does in the society as a whole under other relationship institutions. The institution isn't the cause of it. Frankly, the government is, by doing what they've done to make it difficult. That's the last time I'm going to talk to you about it, Debbie. Have a nice day. Roy, what was that word again? Well, I don't know. Jewel, I don't know what word you're talking about. That word again? I'm not sure I know which word you're talking about. If I see you, if you tell invidious, I think I said insidious. I'm not sure. Sorry, Jewel, I'm not sure. I think I probably said insidious. Well, Brutus, Thunder, and you say the whole point of my grandfolks having 23 kids was for slave on the ranch. Yeah, man, are you that? I hope I'm misreading that. But the purpose of children in before the industrial age, you didn't survive unless you had children that could help you out on the fields. So what are you talking about? Are you that far removed from reality? When you're in your old age, and for some reason or other, the government's taking your pension from you, as they're about ready to do, and you can't go out and fend for yourself, who are you going to rely on? Ever thought about that? That's God's plan. Man's plan is to make you dependent on these assholes. Have fun. Ophidian. You want to know what Ophidian means? When I'm on Twitter or YouTube, I often use words that the AI is not going to pick up. I'm very well educated. Okay, very well educated. And instead of calling him a Snake, I called him an Ophidian. It's the same thing. Okay, so I just used that word so they wouldn't take my tweet down, because they don't know what it is, and even if they took, and they're not going to take the time to look it up unless they have a vast thesaurus, which I really doubt. So that's what it is. Thank you for letting me know which one it was. Yeah, James Barnick, you say with today's very liberal divorce laws, a guy with assets can't risk getting married. Even non-state sanctioned relationships, they can still come after you. You know, it used to be that you had to have a marriage contract, and they've really made the marriage contract so it's of no use anymore. I mean, if you have sex with your wife and she wants to turn around and say that you forced, you raped her, you have no recourse. Who's going to believe who, right? So even in that regard, the licensed marriage means nothing anymore. They've totally destroyed the man-woman relationship, as you've seen with my reaction with some people on here today, who identify a particular relationship as being evil in and of itself. I'm going to tell you another thing, okay? And I think you'll understand this, whoever that was. As I just mentioned earlier, the Bible isn't a set of Napoleonic laws. It doesn't say you can't do anything unless it's expressly permitted. That's Napoleonic law. The scriptures are, you're permitted to do anything unless it's expressly prohibited. Totally different, which is what our republic was supposed to be set up on. So, what you're after is, and I mentioned this in a video some time ago, your own fruit. You don't want to be like every other tree. You get a choice. You don't have to be an apple tree. You don't have to be a pear tree. And you likely aren't. You don't have to be an olive tree, and you likely aren't. You might not be a cherry tree. Jesus cursed the fig tree because it did not produce fruit, which is what it was designed to do. That's why it was cursed, not because it was a fig tree. So if you're a fig tree and you're producing fruit, if you're a cherry tree, an apple tree, in other words, you don't have to be like everybody else. But what you have to do in righteousness. 2 laws: love God, love your fellow man. You have to do it in righteousness. And you're looking for God to sanctify your fruit. And as long as it's not prohibited, and as long as it's fruitful, and there are different definitions for being fruitful. In a man-woman relationship where they can't have kids, as long as they're cultivating that love between each other, that counts, okay? You're looking to be sanctified in the path that you choose. Now people say, but that's wide is the way, and it's the way of death. Righteousness is the key. Unrighteousness is the wide way. And what those are have been really misidentified by religious institutions as a whole, because they want to control you. They want to control what you think. They want to control how you, they want to put you in a box which then serves the government. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. Hey, we've been going for how long here? For those of you who are my friends, and I trust that's most of you, we've been going for almost an hour and a half. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't condemn something because of how it's misused by a small group of people. I often come after Christianity as a whole thing, which I realize isn't a good. I shouldn't condemn all of Christianity because of the abuse by the ecclesiastical leaders and those who have an agenda. But unless I do that, you won't look at what I'm talking about. But I'm not serious in attacking Christianity as not as an but as a belief system. What I'm attacking is how it's been abused by a few that have caused a vast majority to be hoodwinked. So by the same token, don't you dare attack my marriage system and say that the system is wrong. Don't do that. Because in the future, it's going to be what saves you and your posterity. And if you believe the Bible, it's right there. Isaiah 4. Okay. Jewel box. Oh, okay. My best friend, I always think about, I would love to meet up. I don't need that. I would love to meet up with some people somewhere. You guys know where I hang out. I hang out at a place called The Break. It's a bar and grill. I hang out there. There's a South Jordan Daybreak break, and there's one in Murray. I've talked about them. I in the cold weather, because I like to run, but I won't do it in the cold weather because I have athletically induced asthma, bronchitis. I lost part of my lung, not because I was abusing myself, but I got exposed to some really nasty stuff when I was in the military. So I don't like being in the cold weather and exercising because that's so. Instead, I'll go to, for instance, a mall to walk. I'll do calisthenics, push-ups. I don't go to gyms because, frankly, it's just not a comfortable environment for me. I can't compete with the buff You know, washboard, washboard ab dudes. No, not a chance. I'm not. I'm athletic, but I'm not ripped. Some people would say I'm ripped. I guess I've been told that, but not. I'm not trying to compete with the younger guys. And I know that's not the only reason to go to a gym, but I can do what I need to do without paying the money to go there. So I just don't. But you know I'm on Twitter. You know I'm on Twitter. I'm not going to hand out my phone number or even my email, although my email can be found, but I never hardly check it anymore. But check my Twitter and send me look at one of my posts or whatever, and send me a note, a little message there. Not necessarily a DM. I don't look at my message requests, by the way. I just don't bother because there's a lot of reasons for that, as I said before. But you can send me a message, and if I see it, and you're saying, hey, we're going to be here at such and such a time, I'll be there. I mean, frankly, people say, Roy, you got to be careful. There are people out there who want to assassinate you or whatever. Number one, you don't want to mess with me, okay? You really don't. Number two, even if that did happen, I miss Carol. I miss Carol. And one of my kids died. My brother's dead. My mom and dad. I think you read between the lines there. No, I'm not. No, you know that I'm not, Debbie. That's okay, Debbie. We can agree to disagree as friends on that. That's fine. No, I'm not Mormon. You know that. Not anymore. Not for 4 decades. Not Muslim. No. I get it right out of. I'm going to show you where I get it, Debbie, and where I knew about it even before I heard the Mormons discussing it. I got it right out of here. So your line in the sand is you'll never change your mind. That's fine. Okay, that's your choice. It's my line in the sand, and I know it's a way that the tares and the wheat will be separated in the last days, and I get that from here. And the rabbis even talked about it. Not that I have much respect for Talmudic rabbis, but they do have an insight into their history. And they even said the Messiah will not return until polygyny is reinstituted by the Jews. The Jews prohibited polygyny, and it was only the European Jews, and they did that in 1000 AD. And I never can remember the rabbi's name who was kind of in charge of the whole European area. And he said, we're not going to do this anymore. Why? Not because God told them to stop, but because they didn't want to upset their Christian neighbors. So they said, let's suspend it for 1,000 years. Well, you know when that 1,000 years was up? 2000. Yeah, 23 years ago. They could go back to it now, but the state of Israel will never do that because they're not true Israelite Jews, Judahites. They're not. They don't obey Torah. They have sects there. They have groups that obey Torah, but the nation as a whole doesn't. It's no more Israel than I can't even think of a more decadent, disgusting country than the United States, frankly, right now. But if I said that, you'd say, well, that and Israel are the same thing. And you know what? You're really right. Okay. No, there you go, Douglas DeLong. See, he's saying that you can only have one wife. 1 Timothy, Titus. Who's that addressing? And what does it mean? This is going to upset the Catholics. You cannot be a bishop unless you're married, because you're officiating over the entire community, some of whom or most of whom are married. So the requirement was that a bishop had to be married, be the husband of one wife at a minimum, not that he was restricted to one wife. Now, you may disagree with me on that, but that's because you've been schooled in the Christian prejudice and bias of the last 2,000 years. You don't understand the original Israelite traditions. You don't understand the commandments. You just assume. So all those scriptures that you just quoted have to do, You know who the most celebrated polygamist of all time is? Does anybody know who the most celebrated? You're defensive because you're wrong. I'm not being defensive. If you're talking to me, I'm trying to explain to you that you don't know what you think you know. And I have every authority in the world and in the universe to say that. Does anybody know who the most celebrated, greatest polygamist of all time is? Mimi, you're here again? You know what? I forgot about you. I meant to throw you off of here a long time ago. Oh, I can't do it there. I got to do it here. Do I have a I think I know how to do it here if I can find you. And why am I going to throw you off, Mimi? Not because you disagree with me, but because you can't help but to use pejoratives, and that's something I don't put up with. Okay, so let's see if I can find you here. It's going to be towards the end. Oh man, Mimi, you might get away with it this time, but I'm going to be looking for you, and I'm going to take you out next time I find you. Mohammed was pretty. The real Mohammed, by the way, Debbie, what's historical about him is probably not true. You got to remember that Muhammad, his people divided up into two groups. We're not even sure if the Quran was actually written by him or not. Frankly, we're not sure. Muhammad may have been an okay guy, actually. I'm not saying that for a fact, but I am saying that the history that we've been fed about Islam is not true. They always forget about the division and the fight for power between the Sunnis and the Shiites. We even do that today when we talk about Islamic terrorism. We don't talk about this division between those two groups. So I'm not sure that Muhammad is as he's been depicted to us, or even in the Quran, about all that. Yeah, Debbie, again, I just gave you historical information myself, okay? I use history and statistics as well, Debbie. Okay, last time I'm going to address it. Okay, we'll just agree to disagree, okay? I better not say that. Flesh dies, the soul is forever. Zara Drew, hey, I've talked about that. What was the flesh in the Garden of Eden before the fall? Well, when Adam was opened up and a rib was taken out. By the way, what rib means is kind of interesting if you look it up in the Hebrew. That was before death was in the world and flesh was there. You're really missing the point, Zara Drew. You're denying your own creation and your own destiny. If you don't get your flesh back, when you die and you don't get your flesh back, in a more incorruptible manner, like it was in the Garden of Eden. If you don't get that, guess what? You're cursed. You're cursed. So don't be demeaning your flesh. A very bad idea. If you demean something like that and you don't understand what you're doing, God just might give you what you ask for. And then you'll be... I'm in a different season in my life, Roy? No. Sorry, I'm not. See, that's where you're saying. I'm not going to address you again either. I'm looking for Mimi here because I want to get rid of her. Boy, she must be way, way back here. And Stacy Lynn, you need to kind of, is it Stacy Lynn? You need to tone it down too. Maybe it's not you anyway. Where the heck did Mimi go? Mimi, post again so I can find you easy. Then I'll kindly remove you from my YouTube channel. There you are. No, that's not you. Mimi loves Jesus. Maybe that is you. Let's see if I can get rid of you. Dang it. Sometimes it'll work and sometimes it doesn't. There we go. There we go. Bye, Mimi. All right. What about the Wahhabists? The Wahhabists are Sunnis. Okay? When I say Sunnis and Shiites, that's the two major groups. The Wahhabists are under the Sunnis, and they're primarily in Saudi Arabia. Okay, who asked that? MG85, MQ85, MQ85. Yeah, the Wahhabists are Sunnis. Okay, they're a subdivision of the Sunnis. All right. There are really only two main divisions, the Shiites and the Sunnis. And then under the Sunnis, you have the Wahhabists. Okay. Yeah, don't think that I get upset when people leave because of what I say. I don't know if I dare say it this way. I'm going to say it more generally. Jesus was accused of being a wine bibber. Jesus was accused of blasphemy. Jesus lost friends and family members because of what he taught, what he stood for. If I become popular like Rihanna, then I know something's wrong with me. If I become loved by the world because I tell them what they want to hear, that's prima facie evidence that I am of the world. I might be here. I might walk this land, breathe this air. But I don't belong to the bullshit anymore. I served in the military, and I regret it. God put me there to learn a lesson, just like he sends us here on earth, even though this is a shit field where we get shit in our boots. He sent us here to learn a lesson. Well, I did. He put me in the military. He did. I had very little control over there, actually, when I look back on it. But I was there to learn about the evil that's coming out of this place and out of others like it. And that's why I speak out today, because other people that were in the military that are still under the UCMJ, either because they're active, reserve, or because they're retired people can't speak out the way I do either. I can say things that they can't. And I do, as most of you know. Okay, it's now been almost an hour and a half for sure. And I've said my piece. So let's wrap it up. We're waging, the governments of the world and the powers that be are waging a non-conventional war on you, which is taking in conventional warfare, like in Ukraine, but even more so, irregular, asymmetric, and unconventional warfare upon you, and you don't even realize you're being attacked. The media doesn't handle it as an attack. You're being given all this information. You can't sift through one part of it before they throw more at you. They're attacking your food supply. They're killing you off. They're changing your biometric, your biological makeup. None of this is by accident. It's all by design. And that was the major thrust of what I've talked about today. I got into the other subject matter of the different marriage relationships only because the way out of this, and it says so. I don't have to use the Bible. Debbie was just saying that she can show statistically and historically certain things. Well, I can show you about polyandry places, how that didn't work. I can show you that Israel became a mighty nation because of its marriage arrangements historically. The way out of this is to return back to our core, what we were created to be, men and women designed to multiply and replenish the earth. And it's even mentioned in the Bible in Malachi 4. If BP Earthwatch was here, he'd back me up. And it says, "And in those days I will send you Elijah the prophet, who will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children." What that's saying is not just in the present time, that too, but it's also talking about our ancestors, that they will turn their hearts to us. "And I will turn the hearts of the children to the fathers," not just in the present day, but to our ancestors. In other words, that whole line. And that fits to us. We will be concerned about our posterity. And when they arrive, they will then think back upon us. So, "And in that day I will send you Elijah the prophet, who shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children to the fathers." Why? "Lest I come and smite the earth with a curse." This is the way out, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not. It's the blueprint, if you will. Some spiritualized belief in Jesus without doing, as James explained, is a pie in the sky concept. You'll be destroyed. Belief requires action. The Hebrew word for belief means do, not some spiritualized, emotional concept that you keep handy to fall back on. It's that you do something. That's all I've got for you. The war is upon you, whether you want it or not. You better decide today what side you're on and who you serve. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, situational awareness on high, prep, pray, stay out of the way. Defend yourselves if you need to, but don't go looking for trouble. Till next time.